my
Hey,
head
hey,
in the
welcome back to
stars.
Keeping It Real with Tiff and Carl. I'm Carl Raven.
And I'm Tiffany Salcido.
And today we wanted to talk to you about what we mentioned a little bit in the last episode, right? What we can do to help support our staff who are feeling a little burnt out from all the different um, things that are happening in their lives, in the world, and in their day to day, right? And one of the things we were discussing was that idea of being accessible to staff, and it really is a vital thing to be able to be accessible to staff, right? A lot of the experts say, having regular one-on-one meetings. I think the standard Harvard Business Review says is the best practice is once a week for a half an hour. That may be a big ask, especially for folks who aren't used to doing that, but at least every 2 weeks for an hour is something that can be helpful, right? And when you are able to access your boss in that way, you don't feel like when you talk to your boss, it's because you're in trouble. That really does help with psychological safety, allows people to build that relationship where they feel valued and feel heard, right? But there's traps to that, right? If you are spending your meetings telling your staff what they need to do and addressing their issues or solving their problems so that every time they have a problem, they come to you, right? It's almost as if you're a lion tamer, right? And come to me with your problems. Okay, well, I got a solution to that. Go forth and fix it, right? And then what happens? We start training our folks to be able to feel like we are the people who are going to solve their problems, which keeps them from solving their problems, which means that there's more work for you and more work for them,
Yeah,
right? Chief, have you ever experienced something that in that sense? How do you feel about that?
all the time. So there's a big difference between like teaching people how to do a job, and then the alternative is you never trust them to do that job. Look, right? So where I see this the most is that there's a hard shift between like, let me show you how to do this work. Let me set clear expectations, teach you the skills, help you be competent in the job. And now we've done all of that. And then we keep people dependent. We instead of like continuing to build their capacity, we start to almost micromanage people's ability to do that work in a meaningful way without always having to check in. And part of it, I think, is the need for people to feel needed, right? I need to make sure that I stay relevant. And so I want check in with me. Let's make sure you're on the right track. But what it eventually boils down to, or what it creates, is an environment where people have learned to just that learned helplessness, where over time, um, me thinking for myself or trying something new or deciding doesn't really matter because somebody else is going to come in and either fix it or tell me I did it wrong. And so, what's the point of problem solving? I'll just go to my boss or my leader or whoever to ask the question. Or even if I think I do the right thing, it gets escalated and someone comes behind me and says, never mind, we're going to do it the way that I told you we weren't going to do it because now it's getting tricky. Or, you know, the leader is like super in control over what everybody thinks and does. And then they're super resentful because I can't get through anything without being interrupted all day. But yet you don't put anybody in a position to do anything on their own where I know that learned helplessness exists and what I look for from the outside is looking for the per so and so emails or per so and so documentation. So if I have to like take an action and whatever it is and I have to say per Carl, I can tell you right now there's some learned helplessness already established because I want to make sure that if it wasn't the right decision, to go to Carl and leave me the hell alone. And so that right there, I think, is a definitely a drain on resources where I feel like I can't make a decision about my job, even if I know all the rules, regulations, policies, and procedures, and I have all of this competence. I don't feel like I can think for myself, or it's easier just to go to somebody else to make the decision because they're going to backtrack it anyways. That to me is a huge, huge drain on our resources. Huge.
Yeah. Where I see that a lot, Tiff, is in the work that we do with our frontline supervisors or, just a
Mm-hmm.
couple levels up, right? Or mid-level management, where if you're not careful, you will get that culture of, well, this is what they want us to do. This is what execs
Mm-hmm.
want us to do. This is what the PD wants us to do, right? Don't shoot the messenger. And they don't always necessarily say don't shoot the messenger, but that is the way that they're communicating, right?
Right.
So, yeah, so we got to get this done. And we talked about burnout. We talked about the lack of engagement and in the last episode. And when you feel like you don't have any opportunity to have a say so in what's going on, you feel start to feel that burnout. Well, what's the point? I'm not making any difference. I'm just, AI could do what I do, right? Or whatever else it is that they say, right? Like you said, justifying your job. But that's just on a worker level. With management, it's, well, I'm in a position of leadership, but someone else is telling me how to lead. Or I've learned to have someone else tell me how to lead, right? And that's such a difficult thing. Where does that come from, right? Where do we get those ideas that we're supposed to be able to pass these things down to other people, right? And it's just like that idea, the difference between coaching and mentorship, right? Mentorship is I'm telling you how to do things. Coaching is I'm building your capacity to do it. But I mean, generationally, we're still working with folks in senior leadership who are, our age and above, who were part of this culture of top down instruction, top down, leadership, where every time something comes, they're looking up, okay, what is the next move? And it really can hamstring an organization, and it's passed down through the culture. So,
Right.
if you have been there for 30 years, you know how to move in that culture, the day-to-day beats. And as you rise up in authority, you start recognizing this is how we've done things. And so, why rock the apple cart? Or this is what I know. And just even if you're not in the same organization, if you're my first bosses, you know, told me how to do things and what to do, and they trained me on the job, and they trained me how to process things. And if I had a question, they had an answer for me, right? And they thought that they were a lot of times they think that they're being very helpful, right? But as I moved into more thought management jobs where I was responsible for actions with other people, that's something that if you're waiting for someone to give you an example, can really cause a detriment. Tiff, I had somebody that I used to work with who used to go into their boss's office 8 to 10 times a day
Mm-hmm.
to have them check their work. And they had been at that job for 10 years, had been doing that job for 10 years, had helped train me in that job, right? And they still had not felt comfortable enough to do their work. When they were training me, they sounded very comfortable, right? Very proficient, very capable. But yet, when it came time to do things on their own and officially, they still had to have that leader check their work. And it really made me think, is it that person? Is it the leader? What's the difference, right? How do we build that capacity so that person doesn't have to go into the office 8 to 10 times a day? Every time you go into somebody's office, you distract them, right? It takes anywhere from 5 to 9 minutes to get back to a level of focus, up to 24 minutes to get back to the same level of focus you were at before that person interrupted you. Imagine that leader being interrupted 10 times, right? That's that can be up to 4 hours of unfocused work. We already know the average American spends 2.5 hours unfocused at work, right? And as a leader, 4 hours of unfocused work. I mean, think about the stress and the strain that they're putting on themselves. And I say putting on themselves because what if they had helped build up that person's capacity to be able to make those simple decisions on their own that they already knew how to do because they trained me on how to do it,
Yeah.
right? And that's really
Well,
where I think you're talking about that learned helplessness.
yeah. Dependency is often trained. It's not chosen. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
most people are not like, I want to go to my boss's office and double check every single thing that I do because most of the time what that boils down to for me is a couple of things. Number one, boss is not doing a great job in giving them positive reinforcement and saying, you got this, you understand what you're doing, I trust your judgment. And the other thing is that person is probably terrified of doing it wrong and getting in trouble because that might be the only time that their boss talks to them is when they've made a mistake. And so they're avoiding those uncomfortable conversations by just double checking. So this is all like learned behavior. And as leaders, whether we know it or not, we're super resentful about the fact that people are dependent on us, but we also reinforce it through our actions. And so this is where if we're going to really keep it real, like we need to call out some of those behaviors. Some of the things that you might be doing unintentionally to reward people for being dependent. It might be that you are really kind of rewarding people who respond the fastest instead of people who are taking time to really understand what the situation is. Like, oh, okay, you put the fire out and you put 7 fires out. But what about the person who's investigating where those fires are coming from and trying to find a solution versus just dealing with the crisis? So we're not rewarding the person who maybe is trying to solve systems issues, not just put a band-aid on a bullet hole. Another thing a leader might be doing to reward dependency is that they fix everybody's problems instead of putting people in a position to like think about it themselves and find a solution. They say you should do this or you need to do that. Or sometimes they're praising people who do what they're told over people who think critically and maybe find a different solution or take a risk or take a chance. Another thing leaders might be doing is saying, send it to me. I'll do it for you because it's just faster for
Yeah.
me to just do it for you than to teach you or ask you or connect with you and help find a solution. Or, leaders who, I come to you with a quick question and you give me a quick answer instead of asking me at least one thing to get me thinking for myself. So, if we have leaders who are reinforcing this dependency, whether they know it or not, what we're teaching people is that thinking is risky. Don't do it. Just make sure you come to me and I will be the savior and do all of the thinking for you. And we do it over and over again. And then we cry in our car because we got interrupted 8 to 10 times a day. And, you know, uh,
And we
where
did
do
it
we
to
take
ourselves.
ownership? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, where do we
Yeah.
take ownership for that?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, some people were taught this is how you do it, right? But then other people, like you mentioned, well, just give it to me, I'll do it because I've done it before. And there are some people who, there's some managers I've worked with who are so focused in what they've done before and they're not as comfortable in leadership, right? They're not able to make that transition from the tasks associated with the line staff to being able to be responsible for a more global, more um, you know, uh, um, reserved view of it, right? Where you're detached from the actual specific work that people are doing, or less detached to the specific work that people are doing. And I feel good. I know how to do that. So let me do that. The leadership stuff, I'm
Mhm.
not quite sure. How do I justify myself with that? Right. That's another thing that we encounter. And then also, it's I mean, let's be honest, we're addicted to solving people's problems. We love
Mhm.
solving people's. If you're a problem solver, if you're the person that in your life, in your family, in your friend group, as a leader that has always solved people's problems, there's two things that happen. First, you get a dopamine hit for accomplishing a task, and you get a serotonin hit for helping somebody, making them feel good, right?
Mhm.
And so we are addicted to those chemicals in our body. It's very easy. Dopamine, I mean, anytime you play, Candy Crush or you know, do a doom scrolling exercise, you're getting that dopamine hit, right? The serotonin, I'm helping people, I feel good, right? Those things, a lot of times we think that that's a positive, and it can be, it should be, but we have to break ourselves, we have to wean ourselves from that addiction, because if that's what we do all the time, then that's where we're going to end up with ourselves, and it's going to add, and we're also going to produce cortisol, which is the stress chemical, right? So it really is such a challenging thing to do, to turn that. I mean, how do we turn that I'm helping people and I feel good to I'm helping them help themselves and I feel good? That's an intentional thing that we have to do, right? Like you said, we train people that learned helplessness. A lot of people talk about practice makes perfect. No, practice makes habits. And if
Mhm.
you do the repetition is what our brain looks for, homeostasis, right? We want to know what to expect. So if you have repeatedly had your staff come in and you do not help them to grow, you just tell them what to do because we don't have time. I don't have time to train them. Let me just put them out there and let me tell them what to do so they can get it done, or let me just do it myself. Then you're not building that capability in those people, which means they're going to keep coming to you, which means you're going to spend those 8 to 10 times rather than 2 or 3 times a week, right? But it's an intentional shift. We have to recognize what is it that we are putting out to our staff who all look up to us, even if they don't look up to us in admiration, they look up to us in terms of status and stature, right? Think it's Lamar Henderson, who we've had on the on the show, he's talked a lot about the difference between authority and leadership because they're two different components of overall leadership, right? Authority is I have the authority to do something, right? The leadership is I am growing my team so that we all do something together. Got to find that happy balance, that place where that meshes, where I still have the authority at the end of the day. And a lot of people get scared. At the end of the day, I'm the one putting my name on this. This is my work performance of my team. So I have to, you know, oversee that and I have to make sure it's done correctly. But if we don't train our staff to do it correctly, how's it ever going to get done in the way that we would like them to do it?
Right. Well, I think the remedy here, or the anecdote, or whatever you want to call it, the way, and I'm obviously very biased in this direction, is having that coach approach or that coaching mindset and really thinking about like, how do we let go of control and put other people in a position to think and grow and develop themselves? And this is really hard for those people who really get their value from being needed. Like they need to feel needed, whether it's conscious or not. Um, but when you really kind of embrace that coaching mindset, what you're really embracing here is to know that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. If you're really looking at being an effective leader, you're creating other leaders. You're not creating followers. You're creating people who can think for themselves, who have the strategy in mind, who have the skill set to be able to navigate whatever challenge comes up. And so part of your job is not to just give people the answers, but really to help build people in their ability to think for themselves. And again, keep in mind the goals and strategic positions of the organization. So they're thinking in line with the CEO or with the director, with whatever it is that the vision is for that role, whatever it looks like. But with that coaching mindset, I think that the part that most people, especially when the demands are really high and everything is time sensitive, that we put that quick answer out there as a way of saving time, but it ends up costing us time in the long run. So part of what we have to embrace and be willing to do, and I say willing to do, is that you have to have some short-term discomfort to be able to provide some long-term relief. And that means that you are going to put people in a position to not know. You're going to have to maybe do some additional research or connect people to resources for them to figure things out on their own. And that takes some time. And it saves you tons of time because that time it charges interest. So coaching is not about like abandoning people. It's not like not helping or supporting people. It means that we hold them capable and know that I've trained you, you've developed, you still have some development to do. And I know that you can figure this out and I'll support you in figuring it out. But what I'm not going to do is think for someone who can think for themselves. And so for us as leaders, especially those who are feeling like very overwhelmed, you have to pay attention and check into what you've trained people to bring to you, because you've created that environment.
Yeah.
You've created it.
And there's a time and place, like we talked about, just with the habit, in onboarding, induction, that's when you fill their heads. That's when you tell. It's like situational leadership. That's stage one. You're telling people what the job is, what the specific components of the job is, how to do that job, right? Based off of the technical support that we have, the systems that we have, the expectations in that way, right? But when you have somebody who's been there after they get that technical support and that functional support, the next piece is the critical thinking, right? To be able to, how can I do this? You know, and so that next level in situational leadership is really the coaching phase, right? So, you know, how are you feeling about things, right? Where are you struggling? You know, what are some opportunities that you have? Like you said, just asking those questions. But how have you done this before, right?
Mhm.
When's the last time that you had, had this opportunity? You know, what do you think might be a good answer, right? Yeah, that's such a powerful question to ask. What do you think would be a good answer? Like you said,
Right.
we don't have to show our expertise, right? I mean, it's already there. It should be implied, right? If you're a leader, it's because you know how to do the job or you know how to lead people, and part of the leading people is them building their capability and expertise, right? So rather than this is where you need to go, this is what you need to do, or just give it to me, you know, where do you think you could find this? Right.
Right.
And just be comfortable with the fact that someone's going to sit in your office maybe an extra 5, 10 minutes and maybe look at you in a way that, like you said, is painful or uncomfortable, or like they want you to give them the answer. There's a lot of folks who, why can't you just tell me what it is? Well, I can tell you what it is, but then the next time you have this and I'm on vacation, what's going to happen?
Mhm.
Right? Who are you going to lean on? Right? When maybe this is something that there are resources you can access yourself that can you can find this without me, right? Which, like I said, the benefits is not just we're building capability, we're also building a bench strength of people who are really, capable of doing the job. So you can go on vacation and relax, but then also it lowers your workload. Even including regular one-on-one meetings with your staff will keep them from coming into your office willy-nilly, coming up with all these different ideas that consistently interrupt you and get in the way of you being able to be as functional as you want to be. And sometimes you can't. I mean, if you're in the office, senior leaders spend 60% of time or more in meetings. So maybe you can't necessarily always be there for those folks. And you might have a group of people just waiting for you before they can move. And I've seen this in mid to senior level folks who are waiting for their leaders to say yes or no on something before they even make any decisions when there's hundreds of people underneath them that are waiting for them to make a decision, right? So we train our folks to be helpless, and leaders can be just as helpless. How do we to build that capability, asking those questions? You know, any any of those that really stand out to you, Tiff, as powerful coaching questions that people can use?
There's so many, but I would like to just go back to this idea of like people can feel powerless at every level. And this is where we need things to trickle down. If we're being really clear on the goals, if we're being clear on the vision, if we're being clear on like how we operate, then we shouldn't have to wait for someone to give us the thumbs up unless it's legal. It's going to have a huge impact on the community, or maybe I don't have the knowledge to be able to know if this is the right or wrong thing to do. But I don't know any statistics here, but I'm going to venture out. Most of the questions that people are asking are completely under the realm and authority of the person who's asking the question. They probably a lot of times know what to do. They just lack the confidence to follow through because they're afraid of the repercussions. So for me, when I'm thinking about like what questions to ask, it really is dependent on what the challenge is. And so if you're talking with a mid management who is um mid management who is my dog's stressing me the hell out right now. So I'm mid management right now and I'm trying to train this dog to shut the hell up and he's not listening. But um if you're in mid management and you're trying to make a decision um for your team, like, well, what's in line with the vision? Like what would get us closer to our collective goals, right? What's in the best interest of the client, or what's in the best interest of the organization or the law or whatever it is? Those are questions that I might ask. Instead of like making the determination for you, I'm going to be asking I'm going to be asking like what
Roger.
it yeah, what's in line with what we're trying to accomplish and go in that direction. I don't have to micromanage what that decision looks like. If I've made a decision, let's say I'm a mid manager and I've made a decision, and now I'm checking in with my boss to say this is what I decided, and they're like, well, that's not what I would have done. Now we can even coach up to say, well, this is what I did and how it's in line with our strategic goals and how I thought we would accomplish that. What do you think? And just initiate that conversation. When I'm kind of coaching down, it could be about like the day-to-day functions. I am going to ask those questions. What have you tried so far? What's worked in the past? What options do you have? Or what are you thinking about? What would be your recommendation? And for whatever reason, if they're like, I don't know, I'm not sure, because again, that's where they get us. I don't know. Well, that's okay. Where would you start? Or where can you look? Or if, what options are on the table? Or what direction are you looking at? Right? Because most people have a preference going this way or that way. Where are you headed, or what are you thinking, and why? So those are questions that we can ask to really facilitate the conversation. And where again, sometimes leaders are like, but what am I really doing to help? Because I'm not telling them what to do. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? No, what you're doing is you're letting you know I'm available to you to be a sounding board, and I know that you're capable enough to figure this out. And if we identify maybe there's unclear direction, maybe there's competing directions because it says to do this thing, but we've been enforcing this other thing, that gives me an opportunity to know there's a lack of clarity. And that's my job. That's my job as the leader, is to clarify what is contradictory, but it's not my job to think for other people.
Yeah.
So when we really think about like what are we wanting to do at the end of the day, is we want to encourage thinking, not just compliance. I want people to be critical thinkers who can again behave and take action in a way that's in line with what our goals are. But what I want to do is not to have my employees just do what I do. I want them to do what they're supposed to do, in a way that again they can think for themselves. And if you're hiring people that you don't think can think for themselves, that's another big issue maybe you need to resolve at a management level. Like, why would you hire people that aren't going to be good at the job? Like, you're hiring people that are supposed to be good at the job. So what you have to do is move the hell out of their way and let them be good at the job. And if they're not good at the job, then maybe hire differently next time, or teach them or train them or help them understand. But you can't just do it for them all of the time. We don't need warm bodies in the seat anymore. We need people who are like fully functioning, capable, people who can really kind of see where the train is moving and help it go on those tracks.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's such an important piece, as a leader, just I'm making decisions and I need my staff to be able to make decisions. And if my staff can help me make decisions, it makes me look better. A rising tide lifts all boats. If you hire talent, you look like a talented person,
Right,
whether you are or not, right? And so
right.
just recognizing because of your position, the Secretary of Health and Human Services for California, she tells a story about how when she has a decision or a policy or whatever else it is, that's coming to her for final decision, she only wants to write on the email yes or no,
Hmm.
right? And so she wants to write yes or, I need more information. So the email that she gets, the presentation that she gets, is fully formed, and it is something that it comes from not just her deputies but their deputies and down the chain with information and ways to support the implementation of this program that she is dialed into, but she doesn't have to always have the final say. The only final say she has is let's run with it, or we need more information to support it. And she doesn't give a whole bunch of information on we need more support because she trusts her team to recognize, okay, something's missing. How do we find that? Right? That's what we should want. That's what we should want with our teams. If you're hiring people, like you said, for warm bodies, that's exactly what you're going to get until they leave. Right. And so you're hiring talent. People say, oh, I'm losing talent. No, if you hire talent, you're going to build that capacity, and people below them are going to be able to fill that in. And so just break your addiction to dopamine, serotonin, and everything else that you were taught ahead of time. So,
Yeah.
any final thoughts, Tiff, before we wrap up?
I got a few takeaways, some things for you all to think about. Number one, pay attention to what you're unintentionally rewarding. So remember that sometimes we are rewarding dependency when we're jumping in immediately, when we're taking it over, when we're praising effort without really reflecting on what happened, or we're fixing it without having some learning after the fact. So pay attention to the ways that you're creating dependency, even if it's unintentionally. My second takeaway here for you today is to really pause and redirect. So when someone brings you a problem, take a deep breath, like literally take a deep breath, and kind of redirect that conversation with a bit of curiosity. Some of the coaching questions that we've been talking about today. What have you tried so far? What options are you thinking about? What's your recommendation? How would you handle this? And if they're not sure, ask them for a starting place. Okay, if you're not sure what to do, where would you start in finding out the right answer? The third takeaway I have for you is to really, again, help people think about how they think. Don't just have them follow the rules or just be compliant. So you can do this by asking a question before you answer it. You can also help normalize people learning over being just perfect all of the time. So let people make mistakes and fix them. Let people sit in some discomfort from time to time of not knowing. Like there's some time where you got to figure stuff out, and that's where your wisdom comes from. And I really like the idea of a reflective practice. I do this a lot in my coaching practice for myself. And I think it's really good to do with people in the workplace as well. If you, after any type of like task, this might be a great question to ask in those one-on-ones. What's worked well for you, right? Like what worked, what went well, and then what would you do differently next time? And I really love this for myself. This is something I do practice, and a lot of the work I do it after trainings, I do it after coaching. Like what went well today that I would do again? And if I had an opportunity, what would I do differently next time? And that always leads me to learning. I don't feel blame, I don't feel shame. It just turns my fear into capacity. It turns my mistakes into a learning moment. And it really does put it in the forefront of my mind to grow instead of dwell on whatever went wrong, because things will go wrong. We're never going to be perfect. So that's my those are my kind of takeaways here. And just keep in mind that if you're exhausted, it may not be because your team needs too much. It might be because you're doing too much of the thinking for them. So where do you let people who are capable think for themselves, right? I can listen to your problem without making it mine. And that would be my smart thoughts of the day there.
Very cool. And just to summarize, just three questions, just three reflective questions from me as a leader. Where am I helping my team grow? Right? What do I do already? Right? Where am I hurting my team developing and growing? And like you mentioned, Tiff, what am I afraid of? What if they stop coming to me? What am I afraid of?
Right. You might have to tackle some big issues, maybe.
That's right.
You
I don't know about you,
might
Tiff. I'm
have
about to
time.
go.
You might have time. Yeah. I'm like, you might have some time to work on some of the things that are actually in your lane, but okay. That's another story.
I'm about to go tackle some yogurt, blueberries, and granola. So until
Perfect.
then,
I'm gonna go tackle a social lunch that I've been invited to that I'm gonna attend. This is the first time I've been invited for like 2 years, and today I'm going.
right
So
on, right on.
working on the
All right.
burnout.
Well, thank you very much. We will see you in our next
And
episode. Until then, I'm Carl,
I'm Tiff.
and let's keep it real.
Keep it real.